Hello everyone, welcome to our fourth lecture for this term and of course to our fourth module titled Evaluating Messages and or Images of Different Types of Texts Reflecting Different Cultures. So before I start this particular lecture, I would like you to think about the following. What does this mean, guys? Okay, so perhaps you're answering at the back of your heads right now, but the thing is, this one can mean good. Okay, good job, good work. But it also can mean some other thing in some cultures. So, for example, in the Western culture, this one can also mean I need a ride. Okay, I need a ride. So they use this to actually stop a taxi cab. Okay, and then call the attention to the driver. But there are other cultures which see this as something that is insulting. For example, Iran and Iraq. Next up, what is this? What does this mean? Okay, what does this mean? Like, a lot of us would use this to actually indicate that, okay, everything's fine, everything's doing well, okay, or everything's working just fine. But, of course, this could also mean money. In Japan, this means money. But again, in other cultures, this would mean something very, very rude, especially, for example, in Brazil. Okay, this would be something rude to them. So don't even dare do this gesture in front of a Brazilian. Okay, anyway, next up, or the third one. Okay, what about this? What does this mean? Okay, so again, we usually do this to imitate the Italian gesture because this is the Italian, gesture really. But in Italy, have you ever wondered what this mean? What this means? Okay, this means what are you saying? Or may you please clarify what you're saying? This gesture is, in short, used when you don't really find something that's said clear enough. Okay, so you actually try to follow up clarifying what that means. Okay, in Malaysia though, it means to actually wait a minute. Okay, so wait a minute, like give me some more time. Okay, but then when this gesture is actually put towards the mouth, especially in the Philippine culture, we mean let's eat. Okay, so it's an invitation for people to actually eat already. Okay, so what have we realized in that short exercise, okay, or in that short brainstorming of what gestures okay mean? This actually brings us into the reflection that even just small gesture that we do, the nonverbal things that we do, would mean differently when we look at them from different cultural perspectives. Okay, and a simple gesture, simple text for that matter, any kind of image would really mean differently depending on the cultural lens that we are actually seeing it from. So this is where we start off, right? We have to evaluate messages through the cultural lenses that we have, not only through our own perspectives, or else we are not going to really come up with something successful in terms of our communicative objectives because you have to know your target audience, you have to know who you're talking to, you have to know like where you're at, again context, right? You have to really explore all the various components that are there in the communication scenario that you are in. So with that said, okay, we have to look into several factors, okay, several landscapes that make up our communication. We have to really be reflective enough. We have to really be evaluative enough in terms of the messages that they send out, in terms of the intentions that they have, because again, different texts reflect different cultures, hence, they reflect different messages. Okay, so again, same gesture can mean so many things depending on where you're coming from. So let's discuss linguistic landscape, okay? So linguistic landscape is a concept, okay, or a term used to describe the displayed language in a particular space. So for example, advertisements, billboards, and other signs. Okay, so we see that language is all around us in textual form, right? And it's displayed, on shop windows, on commercial signs, posters, traffic signs, offices, schools, or whatnot. And most of the time, we do not really pay attention to them, right? We don't really pay attention to these, but if we do, we are looking into the linguistic landscape. Okay, so in the recent years, a lot of researchers are focusing now on the linguistic landscapes of a certain place, and this actually helps them understand like what kind of culture that place has, okay, depending on the displayed language that they have. So it's actually linguistic landscape is actually a relatively new branch of social linguistics, okay, and it emerged due to increasing interest in multilingualism or bilingualism or languages or globalization, the things that we've been discussing so far, right? And this is because language has the tendencies to actually interact and create an environment or a global environment for that matter. So to not make things very much complicated, don't be overwhelmed by the term, because it just means the language of public signs, okay? Of public road signs, of advertising billboards, of street names, of place names, commercial shop signs, public signs on government buildings, and these all combine to form the linguistic landscape of a given territory or urban or region agglomeration. So let's take a look at the different examples of linguistic landscape. Okay, firstly would be the billboards. Okay, we all could understand that billboards are actually sending out public messages, and they usually are in public places, and they are in public places, and they have to reach wide, range of audiences. Okay, that's why they are in the first place put as billboards. Okay, so this billboard, I like it because it's actually from UNICEF, and it functions as cause support, and it urges us to save Generation COVID. Next up are signages. So signages like this would also be sending out a message. It's very self-explanatory when you see this, right? And upon seeing an image like this, you would automatically know what is about that place, that it's slippery, and you have to be careful, and that you don't really run in that place, etc., etc. Okay, so next type or example of linguistic landscape is this one. Okay, regulations. So buses only, no smoking, do not enter, blah blah blah. Okay, so everything that actually regulates our actions or our movement or whatnot, that is a kind of landscape as well. Okay, same thing with street names. Okay, street names are also painting the linguistic landscape of a certain territory. And graffiti. Okay, even graffiti is actually an example of a linguistic landscape, right? So sometimes graffiti is actually very powerful as well. So later, I'm still going to be discussing more of graffiti in terms of the kinds of signs. All right, next up is geosemiotics. Okay, again, do not be overwhelmed with this particular concept or term, because it's just pretty easy to understand. Okay, when we say geosemiotics, this is the study of the social meaning of the material placement of signs and discourses and of our actions in the material world. That's according to Muni and Evans 2015. Now, to put it simply, just think about this. Okay, we live in a world that's full of signs, and we do not really pay attention to these signs. Okay, and sometimes we're not really aware that they're there, that they're even there. Okay, so for example, if you look around you right now, you have a bottle of water on your desk or on your table or at the side of your bed, but you don't even really care to check the label, or you don't really put so much attention to the label or the information that is in that bottle. So for example, you don't really pay attention to how many times it should be recycled, the details of its logo or its brand or whatnot, because it's a typical things that we really encounter or use or consume every day. But the thing is, geosemiotics is the one that actually pays too much attention to these details, and it actually explores the meaning of the placement of these symbols or signs in our lives. Okay, so actually, geosemiotics is very interesting because you may start to like see more of the world around you, and you may see more signs on your way to school or on your way to the market or even in your own home. To concretize that's very abstract explanation, I know. Okay, I have included the principles of geosemiotics. Okay, by the way, perhaps it would help if I would digest the terms structurally. So we have here geo, diba, which means like location or earth, like it's where you are actually seeing the signs, and then semiotics, study of signs and symbols. Okay, so the meaning of this symbol, semiotics, according to where they are at or the place that they are put in, that's geosemiotics. That is actually pretty much it. Okay, the signs and their placement in our lives. Okay, so let's have the principles. First is indexicality. This principle basically states that in every world, in our world, every sign has its meaning, but its meaning is actually assigned by the place the sign is in or the sign was put in. So for example, you see a red light at the junction, automatically you would know that it says drivers stop. Okay, drivers stop. That's what the red light tells you, right? Drivers stop. But if you see a red light, like for example, at home or in the forest, the meaning would change because it's now placed somewhere else. This means that the placement, okay, automatically changes the meaning of a certain red light. And that is what the principle of indexicality means, okay? Meaning was given to a sign by a place the sign was put in. So the second principle is dialogicality, and this basically means that signs have double meaning and they correspond with each other. So double meaning, you have the same sign, but then when you put them somewhere else, okay, it will basically have another meaning. So that's where the double meaning comes from. For example, you say slow children at play. If you put it near a playground, it would mean that you have to slow down because children are playing nearby, right? But if you put it, for example, in a sped school, you can actually interpret slow children at play. So you could be informed that there are children perhaps with disability who couldn't really walk fast or run fast that are playing there. Okay, so slow children at play. So it's dialogical because it's the same sign, but it can have double meaning. So thirdly is selection. So this principle states that one does not see all signs. Okay, it just basically means that despite the fact that there are lots and lots of signs around us, you don't see them all. Okay, you don't see them all, and you're the one who decides which one you do notice and which one you ignore. Okay, which one you really put more attention to and which one you just shake off. So for example, you're a non-smoker. Okay, you're a non-smoker, so almost always you don't really care whether you see a sign of smoking area because you're a non-smoker, so you're not going to be affected whether there's an area for smoking or not. Okay, so that sign we usually don't really notice it, or we usually ignore it, or we don't really pay much attention to it. Okay, same thing. For example, if you belong to this class and there's an announcement on Big Sky that this class has been dissolved, you don't really put so much attention to it because you're not really affected, right? So you're being selective about what to notice and what to ignore because it all depends on what you need at the moment, or what's important to you, or what's urgent, or something like that. Okay, so we be selective depending on our own preferences, right? Let's talk about kinds of signs. So there are different kinds of signs, and A lot of them are very self-explanatory. Let's have this one first, okay? So these are the regulatory signs. So again, regulatory signs are signs that indicates authority, okay? And they are also legal and official prohibitions, okay? So there, do not enter, yeah, things like this. They are, they actually impose authority. At the same time, they are they are prohibitions that are legal and that are official. Next are the infrastructural signs. So again, infrastructural signs are signs that indicates maintenance of buildings, of infrastructures, obviously, and they label things like this, okay? And it's also to give warning to, it's also to give warning to people. We have commercial. Okay, commercial signs are like this, okay? You see logos of establishments, you see promotions like here, you see here what the event is like, okay? Because commercial signs are obviously those signs that advertise or promote products, events, or services, okay? And lastly, and which is a very interesting as well as controversial one, okay, is the transgressive signs. Okay, the transgressive signs are actually something that deconstructs the traditional or conventional, okay, semiotics. And this is done intentionally or accidentally. Okay, so they break the conventional signs. Okay, so if you look at this, they really break the conventional signs. Okay, and graffiti is one good example of transgressive signs, okay, because this is an unsanctioned urban text, and to me, it's actually a way to empower the disempowered. Okay, again, this is actually something empowering to the disempowered people, and this allows them to leave a visible mark. Okay, this allows them to protest. Okay, this allows them to disrupt the landscape that is increasingly occupied and commanded by the increasingly rich and powerful. So those are the types of signs. Again, regulatory, infrastructural, commercial, and transgressive. Okay, so next up we have the online landscape, and this is very, very, very familiar with us, especially the netizens. Right now, we are actually operating our educational system within the online landscape. We're using Big Sky, and that is huge move of the university to actually address the problems in education that we're experiencing during this pandemic. Okay, so apart from Big Sky, of course, which is an educational platform, you have Google Classroom, you can have Zoom, etc., etc. Then you have the entertainment platforms like YouTube, you have the video sharing platform, you have Twitter, a microblogging platform, you have Instagram, a picture sharing platform, you have Facebook, you have LinkedIn, and a lot of other social media landscapes that we have right now. And we've been discussing what the power of social media is and how it can actually influence the mindset and the psyche of people. And the online landscape is actually a thing right now, and it's something that really, is embedded now in our cultural communication. Okay, and the more we delve into social media, the more we expand our cultural perspectives, because it's really endless possibilities out there. Okay, you can meet so many people from different parts of the world, and you can actually share culture and reshare culture from different parts of the world through social media. Activity 4.1 in the module actually is about memes, right? And we know that memes are one of the tools in an online landscape. And we should say that memes are very contagious patterns of cultural information, and it instantly is passed, from mind to mind, and it has the capacity to shape our mindsets, our behaviors, and our actions. Now, as the last part of this lecture, we are going to brush through the questions that we ask when we try to evaluate, okay, or analyze a particular message of media. Okay, and this could be very flexible. This could be applied to, virtually any text that you encounter. So how do we evaluate? So there are actually principles that we also assume when we look at media, and these principles actually dictate what questions to ask so that we can evaluate and analyze these particular messages properly and with guidance. Okay, so the first principle is that all media messages are constructed. So the first thing you ask is, what is the message of the text, right? To what purpose is the text created or constructed? What message does it send out to you? Okay, or to the community. And then second, how effectively does it represent reality? Because again, when we are trying to construct something that carries a message or a communication, we are trying to represent reality. Okay, so how effective does it represent that reality? Okay, third, how is the message constructed? So how, meaning what are the processes that it went through? Okay, what is the system of the construction? Okay, is the construction through oral or verbal? How do you send it out? Okay, so all the hows for that matter, right? So, for example, you've got brochures. Okay, brochures are kinds of texts that are very visual, and they are actually disseminated to large number of people, and it's constructed through written communication, and it's integrated with visual elements and whatnot to make it more appealing. Okay, so brochures are actually made for advertisements, for example. Secondly, we have media have embedded values and points of view, right? So with this principle, you ask what lifestyles, values, and points of views are represented in the text. Okay, so that's very self-explanatory. And who or what is missing? So again, it's not all the bright things that you see. Okay, you also see what's missing, because if there is something that is highlighted, okay, or is there something that's underscored, of course, there might be something that's being hidden, or there might be something that is carried out as half truth. Okay, so you have to ask that too, since we're talking about values. Okay, nextly, each person interprets messages differently. So this is where individual differences come in, right? So individual differences, we all know, are very much influenced by cultural diversities that we come from. So when we are actually trying to assume that each person interprets a text very differently from each other, we ask, what message do you perceive from the text, you as an individual? And then when you check on yourself, you check on others now. How might others understand it differently? Okay, and why? Now, the answer to this why, one of the answers to this why, is culture. We understand things differently because of culture. Now, if you evaluate a certain text or a certain media, through this, you now ask what particular cultural perspective or what particular cultural landscape makes that difference possible, or is that difference coming from, right? Nextly, media have commercial, ideological, or political interests. And of course, with this assumption, you ask, what is the purpose of the text? Okay, is it serving vested interest? Is it serving an interest of like the minority? Is it serving the interest of like the disadvantaged group? Okay, or is it just serving the interest of the trolls, for example? Okay, so who is the target audience of the text? Of course, who is the intended reader or listener or viewer of the text that's being created? And then, who might be disadvantaged? Again, there are certain types of text that might be rude, that might be offensive, and that might be hurtful to some races, genders, or whatnot. So you have to be very sensitive about it. Okay, who created the text? Actually, the creator plays a very big role in terms of analyzing the intentions, because whoever created the text would have the say in terms of the intentions why that particular media or text is created. Lastly, media messages are constructed using a creative language, having its own rules. So number one, you ask what techniques are used and why. So you ask, for example, coloring techniques. You ask visual arts technique, and why those colors? Because colors also suggest messages. Okay, colors themselves, are very powerful messages already when you send them across. Okay, so that's just one technique. Okay, there are a lot of other techniques, of course. Secondly, you ask how effective are the techniques in supporting the messages or themes of the text. And thirdly, what other ways of presenting, okay, can we deliver the message? All right, so that's it for this lecture. I hope that you've learned something. And to end with a positive note, actually, not a humorous note, I will leave you a meme coming from our online landscape. There you go. Oh, it's not seen, but it says, I don't always plagiarize, but when I do, I tagalize. Yeah. Okay. So, goodbye, everybody. I hope that you have learned something about media literacy. And for us to criticize and analyze the potential effects of texts, we have to be media literate and we have to ask critical questions. Okay, we have to not settle for less, and we have to be um, vigilant, okay, about the things that we are consuming. Evaluating messages would lead us to be more accountable and responsible users of media. Instead of media controlling our lives, we have to control media for the sake of the common good. Okay, so this is Miss Scarves, and bye.